Give it up for Jeff.
All right, can people hear me?
Sure.
All right, if people can't hear me, like somebody just give me like some sort of hand gesture or something. That last talk was so great. Thank you, Laura, for that. And I just want to say that like being able to speak at a js.la meetup is so cool for me. I've been coming to these for a long time. I've been a huge fanboy of just, hacking in general, like outside of programming. So this is a really cool thing for me. So with that being said, I acknowledge that this subject could always be improved. And I've already had a lot of help from some people that I work with, from Ruse, trying to make this topic as clean cut as possible, because I think it's something that a lot of people don't fully use. And I think that even people that are using continuous integration could maybe share that insight with others to be able to make the process a bit more seamless. So that's why I did this talk, because as I learned more about CI, I was like, oh crap, like I don't really want to talk about this, but I feel like I have to. And that's usually why I talk. It's like very passionate, like I got to talk about this because people got to know this is so cool. So with that being said, we'll go into the slides. I have links down at the bottom of all these slides that click to the actual doc, where I've gone into a lot more detail, because as I'm talking, I want to like touch on high level things, and then I might cover a couple things, but I feel like I'm going to miss some things that might be really important to somebody, and I don't want to leave them out. Even yesterday, when I was getting some help from Ruse, I didn't even think about the concept of the definition of done. And then he sent me a PR with the definition of done, and I was like, oh my goodness, maybe that should be in here somewhere. So this talk discusses CI setup, road to benefits, and benefits. I understand when writing this that for some of the people, they maybe don't use CI at all, and other people use it all the time. So hopefully as I'm going through the talk, I can fill in some gaps in where somebody maybe has a CI process that's different than what we're doing at Dollar Shave Club or what I'm doing on some of my open source stuff. And maybe there's some areas where people can look at what I'm doing, see improvement. I want to know about it because I just want to make everything as good as possible. So the objectives are to summarize what continuous integration is, basic front-end setup, and how it can benefit engineers. What is continuous integration? Continuous integration, according to Wikipedia, is the practice of merging all developer working copies to a shared mainline several times a day. And for me, continuous integration is a pattern of programming combining testing, safety checks, and development practices to confidently push code to a development branch, or from a development branch to a production-ready branch continuously. What problems does CI solve? When more than one developer wants to merge into a production branch at once, when mistakes are not caught or cannot be fixed before deployment, when dependencies become out of date, when developers have to wait extended periods of time to merge code, when packages are dependent on other packages, when a package is updated and code must be updated in multiple places or repositories. These are all things that before Dollar Shave Club started to incorporate continuous integration was very difficult. And I think that I think that a fair amount of the people in this room have dealt with the pains of that, even if they're not software engineers. So I have some slides for people that may not have an understanding, and this is my legend. I was really, really psyched about these illustrations, and then Laura's talk made me really not psyched about these illustrations. So this is my legend because I'm going to use them to illustrate what exactly can happen both as a negative of not using CI and then later in the talk as a positive. So we have our developer, we have a CI check which is represented by a check mark, and we have this package which could be a package, a module, or a unit of code. That's really important when I go through these next little bits. So here we have our developer not using CI. They're using multiple bits of code or multiple packages, and they are trying to get that into one package. You can already understand how, when they're trying to figure out what's going on, that can become very, very confusing. Then, when you bring that into more of a team, and they're managing multiple bits of code that could be in a different state. Maybe they did an npm install at a slightly different time, and they have just one patch version difference. Like all of these things are things that I've seen happen and bring our site down. Then you take that to where all of us in this room are actually coding, and this is like not an accurate illustration because it would get much, much, much bigger, and there would be all sorts of loops and things going on that make you realize that not using CI is like a productivity suck, and it sucks. So key points: defining CI, testing, CI tooling, CI setup, and takeaways. Supporting quotes. Like when Wes Boss said this on the Syntax podcast like a few months ago, like I was laughing. Testing is one of these things that people don't talk about. It's talk about a lot because people don't do it. People that do testing are extremely passionate about it, like CrossFit. I have a feeling a lot of people don't test. And then this quote, like I have a little bit of personal sentiment too, because this speaks a lot to my personality. Releasing software is too often an art. It should lean into an engineering discipline. Now, I would actually think of myself as an artist, but I rely on CI or tooling to help me to actually perfect my craft. I definitely don't see myself as the smartest person in the room ever. So if I can have tools that make sure that the little chunks of code that I'm doing are good to go, then that makes me really happy, and it makes me a much more productive engineer. Documentation and feedback tooling. This is something that even in very large open source projects, I don't see a lot. So the great news is that GitHub provides standard templates, which I don't see a lot, aka like contributing markdown file, code of conduct, issue templates, pull request templates. These are all things that can be tied into tools like Husky, which you can kind of get a look at in this repo if you look at it, to kind of realize that even before you write any code at all, you can write about the code that you're going to write, and you can dictate the way that you want communication to happen about code. And I think that that's something that I'm really excited about, where that can go in software development based on using things like CI to make sure that people are talking with each other and documenting their code from like the lowest level, the lowest unit of whatever they're doing, to trying to get people to understand what they're doing at a high level. Unit testing. Unit tests test small blocks of code to ensure that what is expected is the result. Unit tests provide a lot of help with CI. They define code quality and provide developers with feedback without having to push, merge, or host code. So what is really, really cool about this is I could assume that the code that I wrote is going to work in an entire system, but I have no idea. I don't, and if I assume that, I'm probably wrong. So I can start to build a system that tests each little bit of code that I write all the way up to the system that I want to implement into like hopefully with as little feedback as possible. Integration testing. These tests go into a little bit more detail, and what I want to scope it at is I've written my unit tests. I basically understand what this little chunk of code that I've written does, and I've defined it with documentation. And now I want to see what happens when I begin to integrate it into whatever system it's supposed to work with. Safety checks. Safety checks are a catch-all for this talk. Safety checks help communicate code and code quality. Documentation, documentation templates, linting, spell checking, type checking are all safety checks. There's really, really cool tools that I feel like are currently underutilized, like Markdown Lit, Write Good, there's spell checkers, all these sorts of things that can go right into our documentation and even into our JavaScript files to make us sure to make sure that we're being as articulate as we possibly can. From there, we go into type checking. TypeScript, for somebody that comes from a straight up painting background to design to now what I'm doing now, is actually a really, really magical tool, because the way that I like to describe it to people is like, I love Legos and I want to define what my Lego block is, and then I want to slowly define like how all those pieces fit together. So for me, TypeScript has actually made me a lot more powerful engineer, which is something that I wouldn't expect, because when I initially started thinking about it, I thought that it was going to hold me back. Running tests and checks. Most tests and safety checks run via shell commands or CLI tools. Shell commands are commands that run in an application like terminal. These commands can be read from a package JSON or config YAML files. Implementing CI. Getting CI started for a repository takes minutes or even less. CI can be an auto setup if you just have an npm test command for Circle CI or Travis. Or you can make something custom with a configuration YAML file. Dependency updates. One of the huge benefits of basic CI is automatic dependency updates with tools like Greenkeeper. This means that when a dependency publishes a new version, Greenkeeper will submit a pull request triggering CI automatically without a developer having to involve any time at this at all. When John Ong implemented Greenkeeper for Dollar Shave Club, my mind was blown, and I felt so much relief because of JavaScript fatigue. Like, I've always felt like there were these new things and I wanted to learn about them, but it was so hard to keep up. But with Greenkeeper, I began to use certain tools, and then I only worry about breaking changes, which has also made changelogs become very, very important to me, because I know to pretty much not pay attention to I generally don't worry about what's happening within all of the dependencies that I use for my projects until it's a breaking change, and then I know to go and look and see what they've changed. Publishing repositories. Publishing packages, even if only dependents of an organization's dependents, can be very valuable. With a few steps, packages can be published publicly or privately. This was like the thing that really was a game changer for me as far as my productivity at Dollar Shave Club and as an engineer in general. And the reason why is when I realized that some of our larger repositories, aka we have an Ember Engine app, or it's loosely an Ember Engine app, that we could turn that into a private NPM package, and when we changed some code there, and then we could automatically publish an update with CI, the amount of time that it would take to have that populate to all of our Ember apps, which was 3, so to our 3 main Ember apps, that essentially took like a couple hours. So let's say that I'm working, it's like 6 o'clock, I finish my face engine changes, and then I get approval. That merges in. CI automatically publishes that for me. I could show up to work the next day and Greenkeeper will have submitted the PR and all of the CI would have run all the tests to let me know if I could automatically merge that, which automatically merging is going to come in one of the next slides because that's ultimately where I want to get to with all the code that I'm writing. So CI benefits: free, auto publishing, auto merging, which I'm going to get into with a super plug. Don't have to wait for private package updates. Don't have to worry about falling behind on dependent packages. No effort code quality maintenance. So first we have like where we started about 2 years ago with CI. So we start to run these tests and then the developer does the semver bump and the publish. That's pretty cool. Like at the time I was like, this is pretty awesome. And then when I realized like, oh, I can just run all the CI and then I can have CI do the publishing for me, and then whatever dependents fall after that, they can automatically do their CI as well with Greenkeeper. That's also like, we're getting on the level of like, I'm really psyched about this now. Like I have so much more time to surf. It's like, it's the best. And then we get to where we are touching on right now at Dollar Shave Club, which to me is so cool because most of my time is focused on being a better engineer and thinking about how I can communicate about the stuff I'm passionate about, which is being a better engineer. Because we've begun to set up systems where we use a tool called Auto Merge that was written by John Ong. And we also have another tool which has not been open sourced yet that was written by Matt Young that's Auto Update. And so pretty much what that means is as our Dollar Shave Club team that is about 20 or 30 front-end software engineers are all like integrating and like merging to our master branch that goes directly to production several times a day. We have certain repos where we set an auto merge and we set an auto update, and if all the CI passes, that stuff goes right to production. And it works really, really well for us. So that's where I see CI getting to, but I feel like there's still more, and that's where we start to get into some of the tools that I've already talked about, and then some of the tools that we're progressing on right now. So one tool that I wrote about a year ago, which is ESCheck, and what ESCheck does is it checks the version of JavaScript. Now this is kind of cool because you can just make sure that you're always rendering ES5, which is where we're at right now to make sure that we're giving an okay experience for our customers. But where I want to go is I want to take ESCheck to a place where we're saying we want to deliver the bundle of JavaScript based on where our customers are viewing our product, which is for me our website. So that's where I want to take ESCheck, and then we go, and so that will hopefully be happening in the next few months. The other thing, which I think is super cool, is shout out to somebody that got me on the path of CI, which is Brian Gonzalez, and that is Harmless Changes, which is a really cool tool that we're slowly getting that like up to where I want it to be. And what that will do is if you only updated an image, if you only updated the text, and you're not very specific about certain things, you skip all CI and you send that right to production. So at that point, like image updates are like within minutes. You have code updates that are within a couple minutes. It's a really cool place to be because all those hours that we took away from CI and deploying things, I'm now able to focus on writing as awesome code as I can, and hanging out with all my friends. That's it. That's my talk.
You got to turn your mic off.